I often get asked what's the best camera for vlogging, documenting your life, photography, or shooting cinematic video. And while there's a lot of cameras I could pick, I almost always recommend people start with their iPhone. And not just because it's the camera you always have with you, but because nowadays you can genuinely get excellent looking video with just a phone. Here's some video footage I took in Japan last month. The crazy thing is that I filmed all of this using just my iPhone with a pretty simple setup. But iPhone footage isn't gonna look like this straight out of the camera app. In order to get more cinematic looking video out of your iPhone, there are a few special accessories, apps, and settings that I use, all of which I'll talk about in today's video. Let's get into it. So while I was in Japan last month, I spent an entire day walking around and practicing film photography, and I wanted to take some good video footage too, but decided that instead of bringing my normal Sony mirrorless cameras, that I would keep things compact and try only using my iPhone. I'm still editing it, so you'll see that video released on my channel soon, but so far I'm really pleased with the footage that I got. So the iPhone model I personally use is the iPhone 17 Pro, just the smaller regular Pro model, so it would be even more compact and pocketable. I also got it in the best color, blue, with 1 terabyte of storage. Now you of course don't need the latest and greatest model to get amazing looking video, although the newer ones generally do have better cameras. On my 17 Pro, there's 3 cameras. The main 24mm one has the biggest sensor and technically produces the best quality image, but I've also found that using the 48mm lens or even zooming it into 100mm or 200mm can also produce very usable footage. But if you do have at least an iPhone 15 Pro model or newer, that would be ideal because you'll be able to record an Apple log, which is a big part of how I get a more cinematic look with my iPhone footage. And also having more internal storage is definitely helpful because with the video settings and codec I use, the files take up a lot of space, but I'll talk more about that later. All right, now let's get into the accessories. This is one of the most important parts of the whole setup, but for this to make sense, first we need a quick explanation of shutter speed and frame rate when it comes to video. A big part of what makes a video look cinematic or movie-like is by filming it at 24 frames per second with a fixed shutter speed of double your frame rate, so either 1/48 or 1/50, depending on your camera. When you shoot video normally through the iPhone camera app, the shutter speed will automatically adjust to keep your video properly exposed, which is fine for casual video, but this can often make footage, especially when there's movement, look kind of unnatural and choppy. To fix this, we have to manually set our shutter speed to 1/48, which will create a more natural motion blur, but I'll talk more about how to set this up in the next section. The problem is when we have our shutter speed set that low, the lens will let in a lot more light, so if you're taking video outside, it will very easily become overexposed. To fix this, we need to use something called a neutral density filter or ND filter, which essentially acts as sunglasses for your lens and allows you to film at that natural shutter speed frame rate combination even in bright light. There are now a bunch of different companies that make ND filter attachments for iPhone, and they'll generally all get the job done. I personally own one from Moment and this other one from Freewell, and so far I do like this Freewell one the best because it came with a variable ND filter and CPL filter attachment where you can also insert mist filters and it magnetically sticks onto the case that comes with it, so it's a lot easier to quickly put on and off. All right, so before we get into the specific camera settings and app that I use for actually shooting the video, there's one more part of the gear setup, which is the tripod. The iPhone by itself is great for handheld shooting, but there are definitely moments when I'm traveling or just exploring the city where I want to prop my phone up and get shots of myself or just get a steady shot without any camera shake. That's typically where you'd reach for a tripod. I've got a lot of tripods and even bought one of those cheap ones specifically for iPhone, but I honestly never really ended up using them. They still take up way too much space and kind of defeat the whole purpose of having a compact, discrete iPhone video setup. And so the best solution that I found for this personally is this tiny tripod wallet from Moft. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I've been using their products for years, and as the name suggests, it's a wallet and a tripod in one, so it can hold my credit cards, my ID, magnetically attaches to the back of my phone, and then can quickly unfold into this tripod or phone stand. There's also a hidden Bluetooth shutter button built into the fold of the wallet, so you can easily snap a photo or start recording without even touching the screen. You can also easily flip between horizontal or vertical video depending on the look you're going for. Now, I've been using the original version of the tripod wallet for about 2 years now, but unfortunately last month when I was in a flurry packing for my Japan trip, I completely forgot it at home, and just left it in New York and was genuinely missing it the entire trip. Thankfully, Moff just sent me their updated version where they somehow managed to squeeze in Apple Find My with a 6-month wirelessly chargeable battery while still keeping the tripod wallet super slim. So if it's buried in your bag or you leave it somewhere, you can now easily find it using the Find My app, which honestly would have been great to have during my trip. I'll link it down below with a discount code for you to check out. It's probably the only iPhone accessory that I've continued to use for years because it's super compact and it genuinely makes my life easier. Big thank you to Moff for supporting the channel. All right, so nowadays there's a bunch of different apps you can use to record video on your iPhone, but I'll focus on the ones that I actually have experience using. First, the normal camera app is fine, and you technically can change the settings to record and log within the app, but you won't be able to manually set the shutter speed. So while I still use it for casual video and taking photos, if I'm trying to get the best quality video out of my iPhone, I'll go for either the Final Cut camera app or the Blackmagic camera app. Both of these are completely free and will get the job done, so it's really up to you which you prefer. I've been leaning more towards the Blackmagic camera app lately just because it is a lot more customizable, but if you're looking for a frictionless, simpler experience, then you might like the Final Cut camera app a bit better. All right, so now I'll quickly run through my settings within the Blackmagic camera app. There'll be similar settings within the Final Cut Pro app or whatever video app you want to use for this. You can look for these similar settings, but I'll try to be fast here because I don't want this video to get too long. All right, so for the basic settings, first I make sure to have it on 24 frames per second. And then for the shutter speed, I set it to 1/48, and then I lock it there like that. That's to get that most natural cinematic motion blur. For ISO, I've generally tried to keep it at or below 400 to just minimize noise and keep it cleaner. As far as I know, there isn't an official kind of base ISO or cleanest ISO level, but in my experience, the lower the better, although you definitely can push it up higher if it's really dark and then just clean up some of the noise in post. So sometimes I will go up to even 800, 1600 if it's in a really dark setting, but generally I try to keep it as low as possible while still being properly exposed. For white balance, I usually try to set mine manually based on the shooting conditions. So there's some presets here, I believe, for like daylight or cloudy days. So I usually keep it, somewhere around 5500 or 6000 depending on the conditions, and then I'll lock it. You can also use auto white balance for convenience sake and then just adjust as needed in editing. If you do that, just make sure that you go to settings and you scroll down and make sure that you have lock white balance on record on. This way, when you're recording, the white balance isn't going to start changing mid-clip because that'll immediately make footage look kind of unnatural. Next, I'd go down here to stabilization and just turn on one of these settings. You just don't want to have it off because it'll be pretty shaky. When you do turn on stabilization, it crops in very slightly, but the stabilization on iPhone is so good, it's not very noticeable. And I honestly don't really know the difference between these three levels. Like the crop seems the same to me, so I often just keep it on extreme and it comes out looking fine in my experience. All right, then next we can go to settings, and I have the codec set to Apple ProRes 422 HQ. You can honestly use whatever you want here. You're basically just trading some level of quality for file size. And if you're on iPhone 17 Pro or later, you can even use ProRes RAW, which is crazy high quality and allows you to change the ISO and white balance in post as if you were adjusting it in camera, but you do need an external storage attachment. Honestly, this is complete overkill in my opinion. Maybe if you're trying to film like a proper short film or movie or something, you could go for this, but at that point, why not just use like a regular full frame mirrorless camera or something? So personally, I would go with any of these ProRes options here. I have the higher quality one set. But you can even go down to H.265 or H.264 if storage is more of an issue. Next, for resolution, I'll keep it on either 4K or OpenGate. Previously, I think you had to use an external storage to film OpenGate on iPhone, which is basically where it'll use the entire sensor. So instead of having that standard sort of 16:9 video, you'll have a 4:3 video. But there must have been some update because now I can film in this even without external storage. And lately I've really enjoyed using OpenGate since you get this kind of nice 4:3 nostalgic look, and you also have that extra cropping flexibility if you do want to crop it back down to normal 16:9. And then for color space, I have this set to Apple Log 2 HDR. This is really important because it'll give you some extra dynamic range and allow you to properly color grade your footage in post. So if you have an iPhone 15 Pro model or later, so 15 Pro, 16 Pro, 17 Pro, it can't be the base model, you'll be able to record in log. And so I would definitely use this if you plan to edit your video properly later. Then if you are filming in log, I would scroll down here all the way to LUT Manager, and make sure you just have Blackmagic LUTs enabled. I usually just use the Rec 709 neutral LUT. And basically what this will do is allow you to, while you're recording, monitor the video in that standard Rec 709 so you can see the colors fairly normally. It won't be nicely color graded or anything yet, but it won't be that washed out low contrast log profile. And I would make sure not to have record LUT to clip because this will basically burn in that LUT. And if you want to color grade and properly edit your footage later, you're going to want to have that flexibility in your actual editing program and not burn it in here. And then besides that, most of these other settings you don't really need to worry about too much. You can see what I have selected here. One thing that has tripped me up before is for audio, just make sure that you have this recording as stereo. For some reason, mine was set to 4 channels, which records this kind of weird spatial audio thing where the audio is broken into 4 different tracks and it just sounds kind of funky. So I would keep it at the standard stereo recording. And then down in the media section, I personally have it save the clips to just in-app only. So this way, all the video files that I record won't go to my normal iPhone photo library and clog things up. They'll just be saved to the media section in the app here. And then I'll offload this to my computer. So I'm just kind of treating this like an SD card. I'll take footage, it'll show up here. I'll export it to my Mac and then delete it from my phone to save space. But yeah, that's about it as far as the setup. The trickiest thing that I've found with filming on iPhone Apple Log is just making sure you get your exposure right in camera. I found it best to expose for the highlights because it's very easy for them to get clipped, at which point you can't really recover much. So I would take a look at like the histogram here and just make sure it's kind of more in the middle. There's nothing like too far all the way hugging the right side clipping. Because there's not going to be much you can do about that. And then I'll also turn on the grid here, just the normal rule of thirds grid, which will help me get some better, more even compositions. Oh yeah, and you can change your LUT here by clicking LUT and just make sure that this is toggled on so that you're monitoring in that Rec 709. You can see what the footage looks like. You can also select different focal lengths. Here, 24 millimeters is going to be the cleanest, sharpest, highest quality image because that's the biggest sensor on the iPhone, but you definitely can use 48, 100, or even 200 millimeters. Don't be afraid to zoom in. I found the footage to be very usable at even these higher focal lengths. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and definitely click subscribe if you want to see more photography and video content like this. While I was in Japan, I spent an entire day shooting film photos and taking videos with just my iPhone using this exact setup. So click here to watch the latest video from me. I'll see you in the next one.